The room went still as 13-year-old Jake Turner stood frozen at the front of the class, refusing to take his seat. Nobody at Eastbrook Middle School had any idea that what happened next would become a moment the school would never forget. When Ms. Linda Graham, the math teacher known for her icy demeanor, scribbled a college-level calculus problem on the whiteboard to humiliate Jake, she didn't realize she was about to reveal the brilliance of a boy she'd been quietly tormenting for months. "This," she sneered with a tight smile, "is a calculus problem I give to my AP juniors." But what was really going on? Why was Jake still standing? And what secret had been hiding in plain sight, just waiting to be uncovered? It was 9:15 when Jake rushed into class, his breath shallow, clinging to his backpack like it was the only thing grounding him. "Late again, Jake," Ms. Graham snapped, her voice sharp and cold as she motioned toward his seat. "Take your seat, now." Jake hesitated, glancing nervously around the room. "I'm sorry, Ms. Graham, but can I stand today?" Her eyebrows arched, cheeks turning red with irritation. "Absolutely not. You'll sit like everyone else." Jake shifted uncomfortably. "It's just my back," he murmured. "Your back?" Her voice climbed, mocking him in front of the class. "What is it now? Yesterday it was some made-up family emergency. Now, you've got back problems?" A few students laughed. Jake's hands clenched tighter around the straps of his backpack, a sharp throb still pulsing in his spine from the ruler Ms. Graham had struck him with last week when he supposedly slouched too much. He didn't dare speak up then. Who would believe him? "I said sit," she barked, slamming her hand against the desk. Jake flinched but didn't budge. "I can't, Ms. Graham." The room went silent. Her eyes narrowed, and in a calm, almost sinister voice, she said, "Well then, since today you think you're above the rules, maybe you'd like to show the class just how clever you really are." She walked to the board, wiped away the 8th grade algebra problem, and filled the space with dense symbols and equations most students had never even heard of. "This is from my AP calculus class," she announced, smiling with menace. "Since Jake thinks he's too special to sit down, let's see if he can solve this." Laughter broke out. "Go on, Einstein," joked Zach, the class clown. Ms. Graham glanced at her watch. "You've got 5 minutes, or it's a full week of detention." Jake stared at the board, chest tightening. But then, something strange happened. Amid the anxiety, something stirred. Familiarity. The squiggles and symbols weren't all foreign. For the past year, every Tuesday and Thursday night, Jake had been sneaking off to Eastbrook Public Library while other kids played games or scrolled through their phones. Not to read comic books, but to disappear into the quiet math section in the back. "Back again, Jake?" Mrs. Doyle, the elderly librarian, would say, with a soft smile as he headed for the shelf he knew by heart. His love for math started young, just 7, watching his dad, a construction worker who'd never finished high school, measure and calculate dimensions during a home fix-up. "Math's the one thing in life that always makes sense," his dad would tell him, "even when people don't." Jake lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment with his parents and little sister. His mom worked nonstop as a nurse's assistant, and his dad picked up whatever jobs he could. They didn't have time to show up to school events, which only reinforced Ms. Graham's assumption that Jake came from a neglected home. What she didn't know was that Jake's bedroom walls weren't plastered with sports posters or superheroes. They were covered in printed equations, theorems, and notes from online lectures he watched late at night. 3 months ago, he'd found an advanced calculus book someone left on a table at the library, and it was like discovering a new universe. At first, the notation was intimidating, but as he watched free online videos and followed along, something clicked. Still wearing her courtroom suit and clutching that old binder like it was a shield, Mallory Green sat on the edge of her couch, staring blankly as the television replayed grainy footage of her walking out of the courthouse. Every frame seemed slowed down, like it was a championship game highlight, especially the moment Judge Raymond said $200,000. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing on the coffee table. Texts from reporters she barely knew, old colleagues who hadn't reached out in years, and distant relatives offering sympathy in clumsy words. She didn't touch it. Not yet. Across the room, her longtime friend and communications advisor, Erica Miles, paced nervously, yanking at the sleeves of her oversized sweater. Her face was a picture of concern. "You need to say something," Erica muttered, her eyes darting from Mallory to the news ticker crawling across the bottom of the screen. "We have to get ahead of this before the story spins out of control." Mallory didn't reply at first. She just stared at the muted screen, her own face flashing over and over like a warning she couldn't ignore. "What do you want me to say?" she asked quietly. "That I'm sorry? That I earned this?" Erica stopped pacing and leaned forward. "Number. You remind them who you are, why you got into this fight in the first place." Mallory rubbed her temples, feeling every version of herself colliding. The girl from the east side of Jackson Heights, the college student who scrubbed dishes to pay her way through law school at Central Valley University, the congresswoman who promised to stand up for the unheard. Somewhere in the noise, her voice had gotten buried. Erica sat down across from her, elbows on her knees. "You're not done. They want you to think it's over, but it's not. You hear me?" For the first time all day, a tiny smile tugged at the corner of Mallory's mouth. Then the doorbell rang, startling them both. Erica rushed to answer it and returned with a small, plain envelope. No return address, just Mallory's name scribbled in messy, heavy handwriting. She handed it over like it might break. Mallory opened it slowly. Inside was a torn piece of notebook paper. In blue ink, someone had written, "Don't let them break you. You stood for us when no one else would." No name, no signature, just that. Mallory ran her fingers across the words, her throat tightening. "They remember," Erica whispered. Outside, the world was still howling. Commentators speculated. Rivals gloated. Supporters went quiet. Some too afraid to stand beside her, others stepping back to save their own skins. But inside that small townhouse, something shifted. Mallory set the note gently on the table and looked up. Her eyes, for the first time since the verdict, were sharp. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "They can slap a price tag on my name, but they don't get to write my ending." Erica gave her a lopsided smile. "Damn right, they don't." Mallory rose, smoothing out her jacket, its wrinkles now clear under the living room lights. "Set up a press conference." Erica blinked. "Tonight?" "Tomorrow morning," Mallory said. "Let them sweat a little." Erica nodded and darted off to the kitchen to make the calls. Mallory walked to the window and pulled back the curtain just enough to glimpse the crowd of reporters still camping outside. Cameras aimed, microphones ready. They were waiting for her to crumble, but they'd have to wait a while longer. Mallory Green was finished playing defense. The night dragged on into morning without a hint of mercy. Mallory lay awake on her worn leather couch, still in her courtroom clothes, still staring up at the ceiling as if it might hand her the answers she hadn't yet found. The house was quiet. save for the flicker of the street lamp casting long shadows against the wall. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, once, then nothing. Her phone lay face down on the table, buzzing now and then with more calls, more texts, news anchors, political allies, even old friends she hadn't thought about in years. Everyone wanted something from her. She shut her eyes, trying to block them all out, but her mind kept racing. She saw faces of people she'd helped. The single mom from Mesa who thanked her for saving the neighborhood daycare. The retired vet in Fairview who hugged her after she fought to protect his Medicare. The teenager from her old high school who once said, "Pathetic," she muttered. But Principal Williams held up a hand again, his expression unreadable. "Enough," he said firmly. Then he turned back to Thompson. "You say you've been teaching yourself?" Thompson nodded. "Yes, sir. I've been studying online, late at night mostly. I didn't want my parents to worry, so I kept it quiet. But I swear, I didn't cheat." Principal Williams leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing in thought. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, and slid it across the desk along with a pen. "All right, son," he said. "Solve this." He quickly scribbled out a brand new calculus problem, more advanced than the one from class. Veronica raised an eyebrow, folding her arms tightly, clearly confident Thompson would fail. But Thompson didn't even glance at her. He took a deep breath, rolled back his shoulders, and bent over the paper. His mind clicked into gear, shutting out the stares, the pressure, the pain in his back. The numbers made sense. The patterns fell into place. Line by line, he worked through the steps, showing his reasoning clearly, double-checking his work as he went. The room was silent except for the faint scratch of his pen. When he finally looked up, the answer written neatly at the bottom, he pushed the paper toward the principal. Veronica snatched it up before Williams could even reach for it. Her eyes darted over the solution, her mouth tightening. This is correct," she said grudgingly, her voice strained. Principal Williams took the paper and examined it himself. Then he looked at Thompson for a long time. "You may return to class," he said quietly. "I'll speak with Ms. Maxwell further." Thompson stood slowly, uncertain. Veronica opened her mouth, but Williams cut her off. "Thank you, Miss Maxwell. That'll be all for now." She hesitated, then grabbed her purse and stormed out, heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. Thompson watched her go, then looked back at Principal Williams, who gave him a tired, faint smile. "Keep studying, son. But next time, don't hide it." Thompson nodded and walked out of the office, head high this time. The hall seemed brighter than before. Something had changed, not just in how others saw him, but in how he saw himself. 2 days of detention for insubordination and disrupting class. That's what Principal Walker decided, barely looking up as he grabbed a slip from his drawer. "And consider this your warning for academic dishonesty," he added, scribbling Thompson's name on the form. Across the room, Ms. Dunlap sat with that smug little smile of hers, clearly satisfied. She'd won again, just like always. As Principal Walker handed the slip to Thompson, a knock came at the door. In walked Ms. Harris, the science teacher, a younger woman with a sharp mind and a warm way with students that made her a favorite around school. "Sorry to barge in," she said, glancing at the three of them, "but I heard Marcus was here." Her eyes landed on Thompson, instantly reading the distress in his face. "Everything all right?" Before either adult could answer, she spotted the detention slip in his hand. "What happened?" "Just a classroom matter," Miss Dunlap cut in. Nothing that concerns the science department. But Ms. Harris arched a brow. If it involves one of my top students, it does concern me. Top student? Ms. Dunlap scoffed. Marcus? Yes, Ms. Harris said without missing a beat. Then she turned to Principal Walker. What exactly is he being punished for? He cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Ms. Dunlap says he was disruptive and then tried to cheat during a lesson involving a calculus problem. Calculus? Ms. Harris blinked. And you think he cheated? She turned to Marcus. Was this related to the science fair project you did last spring? He nodded, just a little, but for the first time all day, a flicker of hope sparked in his eyes. What project? Principal Walker asked, brows drawn. Ms. Harris smiled. He built a mathematical model to track plant growth patterns. It took 3rd place overall, and 1st in the math category. That project had differential equations most seniors couldn't begin to solve. Ms. Dunlap's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I noticed his math skills last year, Ms. Harris continued. He was using advanced concepts in his lab work. When I asked about it, he showed me some of his independent study. He still keeps those notebooks, don't you? Marcus nodded again, stronger this time. That's not possible, Ms. Dunlap finally said. He's barely scraping by in my class. Because your class bores him, Ms. Harris replied, blunt as ever. No offense, but Marcus is operating way beyond your curriculum. Principal Walker looked stunned. Why didn't anyone tell me? He asked me not to, Ms. Harris said softly. He doesn't like attention, but I won't stand by and watch him get punished for something he didn't do. The mood in the room had shifted completely. Principal Walker looked serious now. Ms. Dunlap's expression had hardened, somewhere between disbelief and fury. This doesn't explain his refusal to follow basic instructions, she snapped. Actually, Ms. Harris said, turning to Marcus, I'd like to know more about that too. You said your back hurt? The room fell silent. Marcus shifted in his seat and winced. Ms. Harris saw it right away. Would you show us? She asked gently. This is absurd, Ms. Dunlap said, standing. We're wasting time. But Principal Walker held up a hand. Marcus, he said calmly, please. Marcus hesitated, then slowly lifted the back of his shirt. Just enough. The room froze. Across his lower back were angry red welts, the kind left by something hard and narrow. Ms. Harris gasped softly. Principal Walker's jaw clenched as he stood. Who did this to you, son? He asked, though his eyes were already on Ms. Dunlap, whose face had gone pale. I fell, Marcus mumbled, quickly pulling his shirt down. Marcus, Ms. Harris said gently, those aren't from falling. He's clearly faking it, Ms. Dunlap snapped, her voice suddenly sharp and defensive. Trying to manipulate the situation. It's outrageous. Principal Walker's jaw tightened. That's enough, Ms. Dalton, he said sternly, cutting off her last attempt to deflect. He turned to Marcus. Did this happen here, at school? Marcus kept his eyes locked on the floor, silent. Ms. Harris leaned in, her voice low and steady. Marcus, telling the truth isn't disrespectful. It's the right thing to do. Marcus's voice was barely more than a whisper. Last week, I couldn't solve a problem fast enough on the board. The room went completely still. Principal Walker's face darkened, and he turned toward Ms. Dalton, who was already stuffing papers into her bag. This meeting has clearly become unproductive, she said stiffly. These accusations. Sit down, Ms. Dalton, Principal Walker ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. We're not done here. Then he looked back at Marcus and Ms. Harris. "This is serious. We'll need to launch a full investigation. But first," he tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the desk, "we need to deal with the academic matter." He looked directly at Marcus. "Son, do you really believe you can handle advanced calculus problems?" Marcus looked up and answered with quiet conviction. "Yes, sir." "Then let's put that to the test," Principal Walker said. "We'll schedule a supervised evaluation, something that fairly measures your ability. No chance of cheating." Ms. Dalton narrowed her eyes. "Fine. I'll prepare an appropriate test immediately." "Actually," Ms. Harris cut in, "maybe someone else should write it, just to avoid any claims of bias." "Are you questioning my professional integrity?" Dalton snapped. "I'm suggesting we keep things clean and fair," Ms. Harris replied calmly. "For everyone's sake." Principal Walker nodded. "Ms. Dalton, you can prepare the test, but I'll review it before it's given. Marcus, will tomorrow morning work?" Marcus nodded, though a flicker of nervousness crossed his face. "In the meantime," Walker continued, "your detention is suspended, and I'll be calling your parents about what we've discovered today." Dalton stood, jaw clenched. "If we're doing this, then we're doing it right. The test will cover material from several grade levels through AP Calculus. If he's the genius Ms. Harris claims, he should be able to prove it." "Agreed," Principal Walker said. "But understand this. If Marcus passes, we'll be having a very serious conversation about your teaching methods and how you've been handling your classroom." As Marcus left the office with Ms. Harris, he felt a rush of conflicting emotions: fear, relief, and hope, all tangled up. Tomorrow would be the moment that either proved his true talent or gave Ms. Dalton more reason to break him. From the hallway, they could still hear Ms. Dalton raising her voice behind them. "This is ridiculous. My reputation speaks for itself." Principal Walker's reply was too soft to catch, but there was no mistaking the change. Her grip on authority had just been shaken. As Marcus walked home, his mind spun through formulas and equations. He believed in himself, but what if the test was designed to trip him up? What if none of it mattered? His phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from Dr. James Richards. Same time today? Dr. Richards, a math professor at nearby Hudson Valley State, had taken Marcus under his wing months ago at the East Park Community Center's tutoring program. While most tutors worked with small groups, Dr. Richards had spotted Marcus alone, deep in a college-level calculus book. "That's some pretty heavy stuff for someone your age," he'd said with a curious grin. Marcus had stiffened, expecting to be laughed at. But instead, Dr. Richards pulled up a chair and asked, "Mind walking me through this integral?" For the next hour, they'd worked together, discussing ideas, comparing methods. Dr. Richards nodded thoughtfully, sometimes offering tweaks to Marcus's process. By the end, he looked Marcus in the eye and said, "You've got something special. And talent like that needs to be nurtured." At first, Marcus had been unsure. Thompson never told his parents about the private tutoring at first, afraid they'd worry he'd become a target for bullies if anyone found out. But Dr. James Roberts had insisted on meeting them. Sitting in their cozy living room in Eastwood, he explained the opportunity their son had. "Your boy thinks the way mathematicians dream of," he said with a warm smile. "He doesn't just solve problems, he sees connections most college students miss." Thompson's father sat a little taller, pride shining through his tired features. "I always knew there was something special about him." His mother, more cautious, asked about the time commitment, and whether it would interfere with school. Dr. Roberts assured her it wouldn't. Now, staring at the text from him, Thompson made up his mind and replied, "Need extra help. Test tomorrow. Important." The response came instantly. "Meet at library in 30 minutes." That evening, they sat at a corner table in the public library, surrounded by open textbooks and scribbled notes. "So, your teacher finally figured out what you're capable of," Dr. Roberts said with a knowing grin. At 58, with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he had the calm air of someone who had spent his life chasing truth in numbers. "Not exactly," Thompson replied, then shared what had happened in class and how it spiraled into a formal evaluation. When he mentioned the welts on his back, Dr. Roberts' face darkened. "That's abuse, plain and simple." "I know," Thompson murmured, "but no one would have believed me. She's been there forever." Dr. Roberts shook his head. "Too often, we defend the system instead of the people it's supposed to protect." Then his tone shifted. "Focus now. About the test. From what you've told me, Ms. Maxwell is going to make it as hard as she possibly can." "I'm scared," Thompson admitted. "What if I blank out? What if I forget everything?" "Math isn't about memorizing formulas," Dr. Roberts said gently. "It's about understanding, seeing how things connect. You already do that instinctively. That's not something she can take away." For 2 hours, they worked through concepts, not just specific problems. Dr. Roberts didn't drill him. He helped strengthen the way Thompson thought, guiding him through strategies and mental frameworks. As they packed up, Dr. Roberts paused. "Would you like me to come tomorrow? Not for the test. That's your moment. But after, to speak with your principal." Thompson looked up, surprised. "You'd do that?" "Of course," he said with a smile. "That's what mentors do. We don't just teach, we stand beside you." For the first time since that awful day in class, Thompson felt real hope. Maybe this wasn't just about proving someone wrong. It was about finally being seen. The next morning, Thompson arrived at school early, his stomach tight with nerves. The building was still quiet, teachers just beginning to get settled. Principal Reynolds had arranged for the test to be held in a conference room instead of Ms. Maxwell's classroom, a small but deeply appreciated gesture. As he approached the room, he spotted Ms. Carter waiting outside. "Thought you might need some moral support," she said with a kind smile. "How you holding up?" "Nervous," he admitted, "but ready." She gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Just give it your all. That's all that matters." Inside, Principal Reynolds and Ms. Maxwell were already seated. A sealed envelope sat on the table between them. "Good morning, Thompson," the principal said formally. "Let me explain how this will go. Inside this envelope are problems ranging from middle school algebra all the way to AP calculus. Ms. Maxwell created them, and I've reviewed them myself to make sure they're fair. You'll have 2 hours. Solve as many as you can." Ms. Maxwell sat with her arms crossed, unreadable. "The questions get harder as you go," she said coolly. "I doubt you'll make it past the first page." Ms. Carter frowned slightly, but kept quiet. Principal Walker continued, "I'll be staying in here to make sure everything's fair. Ms. Vincent and Ms. Carter will wait outside. Any questions before we begin?" Mason shook his head and took a seat at the table. "All right then," Walker said, breaking the seal on the large envelope and laying out the exam papers in front of Mason, along with a few freshly sharpened pencils and a basic calculator. "You may start." As the two teachers stepped out, Mason took a slow breath and scanned the first question. It was basic algebra, almost laughably simple. He solved it instantly and moved on. The first page was filled with 8th grade level problems, and he breezed through them in under 5 minutes. The next page stepped up with more advanced algebra and some entry-level trigonometry, but Mason still handled it easily. By the third page, he was deep into pre-calculus, staying focused, occasionally double-checking his answers. Then came the fourth page, calculus. A flicker of familiarity crossed his face. These were just like the problems he had gone over with Dr. Harris. Outside the room, Miss Vincent paced anxiously while Ms. Carter flipped through a science journal in silence. "This is a waste of time," Veronica muttered. "He's probably just staring at the paper." Without even glancing up, Ms. Carter replied, "Why does his success bother you so much?" Veronica froze. "Excuse me?" Ms. Carter finally met her eyes. "You've been doing this for over 2 decades. Your job is safe. Everyone respects you. So why does this particular student excel and make you so upset?" Veronica opened her mouth but didn't answer. Just then, the door to the conference room opened. Principal Walker stepped out, his face unreadable. "He's asking for more paper," he said. "He's already finished the entire test." Veronica's face went pale. "That's not possible. It's been less than 40 minutes. "Be that as it may," Walker said, pulling more paper from a nearby cabinet. "He completed every question and is now writing alternate solutions for some of them." As he walked back in, Veronica stood frozen, her confidence unraveling. He must have cheated. Maybe he snuck in a phone or something. "He was searched before going in," Carter reminded her, "at your request, and Principal Walker hasn't left his side. Eventually, Veronica, you'll have to face the possibility that you were wrong about Mason." Inside, Mason was fully locked in. The fear had vanished. Numbers and formulas flowed from his mind like music. For each calculus problem, he offered different methods, carefully walking through his logic with clear, sharp handwriting. By the time he set down his pencil, nearly an hour early, he felt something he hadn't in a long time: peace. No matter what came next, he had shown the truth of what he could do. That couldn't be denied or dismissed. Principal Walker gathered the papers. "I'll make copies for Ms. Vincent and Ms. Carter to review. We'll meet again at lunch to go over everything." As Mason stepped out into the hallway, a few students peeked around corners, whispering. Word about the special test had spread fast, but for once, Mason didn't shrink under the attention. It wasn't ridicule this time, it was curiosity, even respect. For the first time in his school life, people weren't looking at him as a troublemaker. They were looking at him as the one with answers. At exactly 12:30, Mason walked into the principal's office. The room felt tense. Ms. Vincent sat stiffly, his test paper clutched tightly in her hand, her face unreadable. Ms. Carter gave him a calm nod and a small, encouraging smile. "Have a seat, Mason," Principal Walker said, pointing to a chair. Mason hesitated, still sore. "I brought a cushion," Walker added, gesturing to the padded seat. That small gesture didn't go unnoticed. Mason sat slowly, thankful. "We've reviewed your test," Walker began. "Ms. Vincent and Ms. Carter have both seen your work. Before we talk about the results, do you have anything you want to say?" Mason glanced at Ms. Vincent. Her lips were pressed tight, her jaw tense. "No, sir," he answered softly. "The work speaks for itself." "Indeed, it does," Walker replied. "Understood," Thompson replied, picking up his test as Principal Daniels continued. "Not only did you get every question right," he said, but you also provided multiple ways to solve the more advanced problems." He turned to Ms. Hill. "Care to share your thoughts?" Ms. Hill leaned in, clearly eager. His work doesn't just show he knows how to solve equations, it shows a real, deep understanding. The way he tackled the calculus problem shows creativity and insight. You don't see that often, even with advanced high school students. Principal Daniels nodded, then looked over at Ms. Grant. "And your evaluation, Ms. Grant?" Veronica cleared her throat. "The basic algebra and trig are all accurate," she said stiffly. "But I still find the higher level responses suspicious." "Suspicious how?" Ms. Hill cut in, eyebrows raised. "You wrote the questions yourself. He was tested under supervision, and he showed every single step clearly. What else is there?" "He must have had help," Veronica insisted, her voice growing sharper. "These are college-level methods. A 13-year-old can't just know that." Just then, a knock came at the door. Principal Daniels frowned but called out, "Come in." The door opened, and in walked a tall man with a salt-and-pepper beard and glasses, dressed in a sharp tweed jacket. Thompson's face lit up. "Professor Martin." "Apologies for the interruption," the man said. "I'm Dr. James Martin, math professor at Central State University. I heard you were reviewing Thompson's test results, and I thought I could offer some context." Principal Daniels, still a little surprised, motioned him in. "Please, join us. And what's your connection to all this?" "I've been mentoring this young man for the past 6 months," Dr. Martin said, taking a seat. "In my 30 years of teaching, I've rarely come across a student as naturally gifted as him." Veronica looked stunned. "You're telling us a university professor's been secretly tutoring a middle schooler?" "Not tutoring," Dr. Martin corrected her gently. "Mentoring. There's a difference. Tutoring is remedial. Thompson doesn't need help catching up. He needs advanced material and someone to help him grow. I met him at the local recreation center. He was working on calculus problems, all on his own. I just offered guidance." "He's telling the truth," Thompson added quietly. "Dr. Martin found me working out problems on the whiteboard and asked if I wanted to learn more." Principal Daniels took a breath, then asked, "Would you be willing to look over his test and give us your opinion?" "Of course," Dr. Martin replied, accepting the test. As he flipped through the pages, his face lit up with genuine admiration. "Outstanding work, Thompson," he murmured. "Especially this one, problem 17. Your solution is incredibly elegant." He looked up. "I have no doubt he completed this test on his own. I've seen the same unique problem-solving style in all our sessions. Frankly, his grasp of math is already on par with what I see in my second-year college students." Veronica made a choked noise. "This is ridiculous. Yesterday he was just a regular kid, and now we're calling him a prodigy?" "He was never just a regular kid," Dr. Martin said firmly. "He's a brilliant young mind who wasn't given a real chance. In fact, he was dismissed and underestimated by a system that should have done the opposite." The room went still for a moment. Then Principal Daniels broke the silence. "I think we have enough here to say with certainty that Thompson's abilities are very real, and his performance in Ms. Grant's class yesterday was completely legitimate." He turned toward Thompson. "I owe you an apology. I should have believed you. The school failed you, and I'm sorry." Thompson gave a small nod, his eyes watering a little. The simple acknowledgement meant more than any award ever could. "So, what happens now?" Ms. Hill asked, echoing what everyone was wondering. Principal Daniels sat up straighter. "First, we design an education plan that meets Thompson where he truly is, challenging, stimulating, and worthy of his abilities. Then, his eyes turned toward Veronica, who sat frozen in her seat. To address the serious accusations of physical punishment, Principal Walker made it clear there would be an investigation. "Those marks could have come from anything," Veronica said weakly, grasping at straws. "There's no proof." But Walker didn't budge. "I'll be meeting with Ethan's parents this afternoon," he said firmly. He then turned to Ethan and Dr. Reynolds. "Thank you both for your patience through all this." "It would be an honor, Dr." Reynolds replied warmly when asked if he'd continue supporting Ethan's academic growth. As they left the office, Veronica stayed behind, the foundation of her carefully maintained image starting to crack. News of Ethan's exceptional math skills had already spread through River Point Middle School like wildfire. By the next morning, students who'd never paid him any attention were now whispering as he passed. Some approached him with questions. Others, like Jake, offered awkward apologies. "Is it true you can do college-level math?" Jake asked at lunch, sliding into the seat across from him. "Everyone's talking about it." Before Ethan could answer, a few more kids sat down at his table, something that had never happened before. "My brother's in calculus over at Northview High," one girl said, pushing a notebook toward Ethan. "He didn't believe me when I told him about you, so he gave me this problem. Said it's really tough." Ethan glanced at the page and gave a small smile. "It's a partial differential equation. Not that tricky, actually." He grabbed a pencil and started walking them through the steps, explaining as he went. A crowd formed, watching in quiet awe. Meanwhile, in a quieter corner of the school, Ethan's parents sat across from Principal Walker. Their faces were tight with anger and worry as they looked at the photos the school nurse had taken of their son's injuries. "We trusted this school," Mr. Allen said, his voice low and controlled. "We work overtime just to live in this district because we thought the schools were better. And this is how our kid gets treated?" Mrs. Allen, still wearing her nurse's aide uniform from her morning shift, dabbed at her eyes. "He never told us," she whispered. "All those mornings he didn't want to come to school. We thought maybe he was getting picked on by other kids. But not this." "You have every right to be upset," Walker said gravely. "The investigation is already underway, and Miss Morgan has been placed on administrative leave while we get to the bottom of this." "That's not enough," Mr. Allen replied, his voice rising. "She hit our son, over and over, then tried to tear him down when he showed what he could really do." "We're also putting new policies in place," Walker said quickly. "No physical discipline, mandatory reporting for every disciplinary action, and most importantly, we've drawn up an academic plan tailored for Ethan." He slid a folder across the desk. "Dr. Reynolds helped us put this together. It includes advanced math classes at the high school 3 mornings a week, continued mentorship, and more challenging assignments to fit his level." Mrs. Allen opened the folder, her eyes wide. "We never imagined something like this for him," she said softly. "Your son is incredibly gifted," Walker told them, sincere and steady. "And we failed to see that sooner. But I promise you, we're making it right, not just for him, but for any student like him." As the meeting continued, back at her apartment, Veronica Morgan sat in silence, staring at the official notice of investigation on her coffee table. 27 years of teaching, a spotless record, now reduced to a stack of paperwork and regret. The person she had worked so hard to be, the respected teacher, the authority figure, was slipping away. Her phone buzzed again, the 5th call that morning. Probably another colleague calling with sympathy or maybe subtle judgment. She didn't answer. Deep down, she knew the truth. She'd recognized Ethan's brilliance from the start, but instead of encouraging it, it had threatened her. In her mind, excellence came from discipline and hierarchy, not raw talent, especially not from a quiet boy whose family struggled to keep up, who sometimes missed homework because his parents weren't able to help. A sudden knock at the door broke her thoughts. She opened it, and standing there, somber and still, was Dr. Reynolds. Dr. Roberts stood at the door and spoke carefully. "Ms. Maxwell, if you've come to gloat—" Veronica's voice was cold as she cut him off. "If you've come to rub it in, just leave." He shook his head gently. "I'm here to understand. If I may come in?" She hesitated before stepping aside, allowing him into her office. He declined her offer of coffee, settling into the armchair. "I've been teaching for over 30 years. He started, his voice steady. "I've seen many students, some struggle, some excel, but few, just a few, have something truly extraordinary. Thompson is one of those students." Veronica scoffed bitterly. "So, everyone keeps telling me." She crossed her arms, her frustration evident. "What I don't understand," Dr. Roberts continued as if she hadn't spoken, "is why you felt threatened by that. Why you felt the need to suppress his brilliance instead of nurturing it." Veronica's composure finally cracked. "Because he made a mockery of everything I believed about education," she said, her voice rising. "I worked my whole life to master mathematics. I earned my expertise through years of study. Then this child comes along, understanding concepts that took me years to grasp. How is that fair?" Dr. Roberts studied her for a moment. "Mathematics isn't about fairness, Ms. Maxwell," he said softly. "It's about truth. Some minds are naturally gifted at seeing patterns others have to work for." He leaned forward. "Your achievements are not diminished by his gift. The tragedy here is not that Thompson has an exceptional ability. It's that you saw it as a threat instead of an opportunity. For him, for your other students, and yes, even for you." Veronica sat in stunned silence, her hands covering her face, her years of certainty crumbling beneath the weight of a harsh reality. The school board meeting was set for 7 p.m., but by 6:15, the district conference room was packed. Parents, teachers, students, and community members filled every seat, and some were standing. Local news outlets had cameras set up in the back. Thompson's story had gone public, igniting outrage and calls for accountability. He sat in the front row with his parents, feeling uncomfortable under the spotlight, but finding strength in Dr. Roberts, who sat beside him. Behind them were Ms. Carter and a group of teachers who had come to support him. At exactly 7 o'clock, the school board entered, and Board President Eleanor Washington, a no-nonsense woman with years of experience, called the meeting to order. "Tonight's agenda has been modified to address the serious allegations at Westside Middle School," she said. "We will hear from Principal Williams, followed by public comments, and then the board will announce its decisions on disciplinary actions and policy changes." Principal Williams stepped up to the podium, his expression somber. "Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. What I'm about to share is deeply troubling, but necessary for transparency and healing." He described the events surrounding Thompson's case, from the humiliation in the classroom to the physical abuse discovered later, and the revelation of Thompson's exceptional mathematical talent. "Most concerning," he concluded, "is that our system failed to protect a student from mistreatment and failed to recognize exceptional talent. Both issues require immediate and decisive action. A murmur rippled through the crowd as he returned to his seat. Board President Washington then opened the floor for public comments. Thompson's father was the first to speak. His voice, though filled with emotion, was steady. My son endured pain and humiliation because he didn't believe any adults would believe him over a teacher. This isn't just one teacher's failure. It's a failure of trust in the entire system. Ms. Carter spoke next, stressing the need for better systems to support students with extraordinary abilities. Several parents followed, expressing anger and demanding accountability. Then, to everyone's surprise, Zach approached the microphone. "I'm in Ms. Maxwell's class with Thompson," he said nervously. "I used to laugh when she singled him out. I thought it was just how teachers kept control. Now, I feel awful about it." He looked at Thompson, his expression apologetic. If kids like me could see she was picking on him, why couldn't the adults see it too? His words hung in the air, casting blame not just on Veronica, but on the whole system that had allowed her behavior. After nearly an hour of comments, Board President Washington called for order. "We've heard your concerns," she said, her voice firm, "and we share them. The board deliberated for a while before reaching their decision, and when the silence in the room deepened, the president spoke up. First, regarding Ms. Veronica Maxwell. Based on the evidence we've reviewed, including documented injuries to a student, witness statements, and Ms. Maxwell's own admissions, the board has unanimously voted to terminate her employment, effective immediately. Furthermore, we will be reporting this case to the state licensing board with a recommendation to revoke her teaching credentials." Applause filled the room but quickly quieted as the president raised her hand. However, accountability goes beyond one teacher. We are implementing district-wide changes, mandatory training for all staff on recognizing and reporting suspected abuse, a zero-tolerance policy for physical discipline, new procedures to identify and support gifted students, and an anonymous reporting system for students to safely voice concerns. She looked directly at Thompson and his parents. "On behalf of the entire district, I offer our sincere apologies for the harm done to Thompson and assure you we are committed to ensuring something like this never happens again." As the meeting came to a close, Thompson found himself surrounded by supportive well-wishers, students, parents, and teachers who now saw him for who he truly was. The attention was overwhelming, but unlike before, it wasn't negative. He wasn't a problem to be fixed anymore. He was being recognized for his brilliance. Later that evening, as they drove home, Thompson's mother reached back and squeezed his hand. "I'm so proud of you, baby," she said. "Not just for being smart. I've always known you were brilliant. I'm proud of your courage." Thompson looked down at his lap. "I wasn't very courageous," he admitted. "I never spoke up about what was happening." His father glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "But you never gave up either. You kept learning and growing, even when others tried to hold you back. That's the kind of courage that changes lives." Thompson gave a small smile as they passed through the familiar streets of their neighborhood. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, advanced classes, higher expectations, and the experience of being seen and valued. But for tonight, surrounded by his parents' pride, he allowed himself to feel the relief of having the truth finally acknowledged. 3 months later, Westside Middle School had undergone some significant changes. New anti-bullying posters filled the hallways with messages of respect and inclusion, and the newly established Exceptional Talents program had identified 17 students with extraordinary abilities in areas ranging from mathematics to music. But the biggest shift was in the school's culture. Teachers who once ignored troubling behavior were now actively addressing it. Students who had kept silent about mistreatment now spoke up, and faculty discussions about difficult students had transformed into talks about how to better engage and support them. Thompson, now attending advanced mathematics classes at the high school 3 mornings a week, had become a quiet celebrity, not just for his talents but for sparking change. The initial discomfort of being in the spotlight had gradually given way to confidence, as Thompson realized his story had helped others. On this particular Tuesday afternoon, Thompson sat in the school library surrounded by a small group of 6th and 7th graders. What started as a casual homework question had turned into a spontaneous tutoring session. "You see," Thompson explained, sketching a diagram on notebook paper, "when you look at these word problems, there's always a pattern hidden inside. You just need to find the right language to translate the words into numbers." "That makes so much sense," Amara, a 6th grader, said, her eyes lighting up. "Ms. Collins never explained it like that." Thompson smiled. Different explanations work for different people. Maybe this way makes more sense to you. From a nearby table, Miss Carter watched with pride. After the bell rang and the younger students left, she approached him. "You're quite the teacher," she said. "You have a real gift for explaining complex ideas in simple terms." Thompson gathered his books, feeling a bit shy. "I just remember what it felt like to be confused and have no one really listen," he said. "That empathy makes all the difference," Miss Carter replied. "Have you thought about applying for the summer mathematics program Dr. Roberts mentioned? You've been hesitant about it." Thompson nodded. "My parents said." Thompson hesitated, his words faltering as he spoke. "I could go, I'm still getting used to people seeing me, really seeing me." Ms. Carter, understanding the weight of his words, nodded thoughtfully. For a child who had spent so long hiding in the shadows to avoid negative attention, being in the spotlight, even a positive one, was a huge shift. "Take it at your own pace," she advised gently. "Just don't let old fears hold you back from new opportunities." As they walked out of the library, they passed by the classroom that had once been Ms. Veronica Maxwell's. Now it belonged to Mr. Diaz, a young teacher whose enthusiasm and inclusive teaching style had quickly earned him the admiration of his students. Through the open door, Thompson could see Mr. Diaz enthusiastically moving around the room, engaging with the students in a way that made them eager to participate. The atmosphere in the room was worlds apart from the tense silence that used to fill Ms. Maxwell's classes. Some good came from everything that happened, Thompson remarked quietly. Miss Carter smiled. "Because of your courage." Outside, in the bright spring sunshine, Thompson spotted his father's truck waiting in the pickup lane. Since the school board meeting, his parents had rearranged their schedules to be more involved with school events and his academic progress. "See you tomorrow, Miss Carter," Thompson said, waving as he walked toward the truck. "Don't forget, the science club is presenting at the board meeting Thursday night," she called after him. As Thompson passed a group of 8th graders, they nodded in acknowledgement. These were the same students who, months ago, had either ignored or mocked him. He remembered the surreal moment of standing in Ms. Maxwell's classroom, solving a calculus problem that had been intended to humiliate him. That day had marked a turning point, not just for him, but for the entire school community. One teacher's cruelty, meant to suppress a student, had ignited a movement toward recognizing and celebrating the unique potential in every child. Climbing into his father's truck, Thompson excitedly shared the equations he had been exploring with Dr. Roberts. As they drove away from Westside Middle School, the afternoon sun glinted off the new sign near the entrance, installed just last week, that read, "Every student deserves to be seen, heard, and valued for who they truly are." The story of Thompson reminds us of an important truth. When we fail to see the potential in every child, we not only harm that child, but also deprive our entire community of their unique gifts. It challenges us to rethink our assumptions, speak up for those without a voice, and build educational environments where every student can flourish. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these essential messages of courage, justice, and transformation. Together, we can create a world where no child's light is ever dimmed by prejudice or cruelty.